This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good afternoon everyone, Shalom Aleichem. Baruchim Abam. So Baruch Hashem, last week we finished the Parak Aleph of Devorah, and the Ramak ended off the first parak with very clear guidelines as to what role these Yud Gimel Middos should play in our lives. He ended off Parak Aleph by saying, it should never be removed from the mind's eye, these 13 attributes. This verse should never be removed from our mouth, so that we should always remember it. Because the Talmud Devorah really said that there are two dimensions of the Yud Gimel Middos Rachamim. Number one, that we're inherently required to follow them in order to emulate the ways of our Creator. But more than that, the Talmud Devorah says that in order for these Middos to be manifest through HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it is required that we accord ourselves through them, and thereby we are ma'orer them from Shamayim. And therefore the Talmud Devorah says, we need to always say the pasuk, Kasher yavoy loy maseh, when a situation arises, sheyitztarech le'shtamish b'mida achas mehen, that we need to use one of them, yizkar v'yoymar, will remember, harei davar zeh tol b'mida ploinus, this situation, in other words, the next time a guy is really annoying to you, and you're trying to figure out, how am I going to deal with this person? The next time you have a difficult situation and you want to know, how am I going to face this challenge? You need to identify exactly which one of these Yud Gimel Middos this situation falls under. You need to mention the Midah. Say, this is dependent on this Midah. Eini roitzel lozes mimena, I don't want to move away from this Midah. Shalei sisalem v'sistale kamida himen ha'olam, so that this Midah should not be removed from the world. So I just want to go over briefly the Yud Gimel Middos. We already did about 30 pages in the Talmud Devorah, but this is sort of the executive summary. I want to thank my friend Rabbi Weldler for putting together this concise summary of these Yud Gimel Middos. Let's go through them quickly, and maybe we'll review some of the main points. And if anybody wants the sheet, we'll try to get it to you as soon as it's ready for dissemination. Okay, so number one, the first midah, of course, is mi kel kamaycha, which the Talmud Devorah says is a reference to Hashem's tolerance, because every moment, you see the sheet over here? Every moment HaKadosh Baruch Hu infuses life within us. He gives us the ability to breathe. He is giving our hearts the capacity to pump. And even so, even while we're doing an Aveira, even when we're using the life He gives us against Hashem, Hashem is so tolerant that He continuously bestows goodness on us, even while we're sinning. That is the ultimate insult. By the way, the Talmud Devorah says, Kel has two meanings. One is, God is merciful, and number two, He's able to take revenge, but He doesn't. And the way we implement this is, even someone who we're supporting, doing kindness to, and they're using that against us, that should not cause us to withdraw our kindness from that person. That's the midah of Mikel Kamaycha. Number two, Noisei Avain. We mentioned that every time we do an Aveo, we create, like it says over here, a destructive angel. And really this angel should be the person's responsibility to care and feed this angel. And really, technically, Hashem should allow this destructive angel to take away the soul of the sinner, to give him kares, or to punish him. But Hashem continues to support the angel until, number one, either we do tshuva, number two, or we destroy the angel. What does that mean? That we suffer yisurim, and then the angel disappears, or somebody goes to Gehenna. So the midah of Noisei Avain is such that if somebody sinned against you and hurt you, and that hurt is still there, in other words, that thing that person did against you, it's still there and it's still hurting you. Nevertheless, we should emulate HaKadosh Baruch Hu to show mercy to that person, despite the fact that we should say, well, why should I help this person? They continuously hurt me. The hurt that they implemented is still extant. Nevertheless, we should emulate HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The third midah, v'oiver al pesha, is that Hashem lowers Himself to the extent that not only does He overlook our sin, but He personally comes and cleanses our sin. He doesn't say, hey pal, it's your problem. You figure out how to fix yourself. The Rebbe Shalom comes and, so to speak, gets down and dirty by cleansing the excrement of our sin. So too, if somebody hurts us, we shouldn't say, well, it's this person's problem, it's not my problem, let him fix up his mess. No, it should not be beneath our dignity to go lower ourselves to fix up someone else's mess. That is the midah of oiver al pesha. Number 4, l'she'iris nachalasei. Devorah says a beautiful thing. God is, so to speak, she'er basar with us. He's literally related to us. He calls us my daughter. He calls us my sister. He calls us my son. We are flesh and blood, so to speak, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. To the extent that when a Jew suffers, it hurts the Ribono Shel Olam. So the same way that we are, so to speak, blood relatives with God, we are blood relatives with every single Jew, and it's so nicely, it says over here, this is the concept of a minyan, where when 10 people get together, it's really 100 people, because within each one of the 10 is a piece of all the other 10 people, and therefore anyone who's among the first 10 to come to the shul gets credit, keneged 100. That's the reason why every Jew is responsible for another Jew, because when someone else sins, it's not his problem only, it's my problem. And therefore, what we should learn from here is that when another Jew suffers, we should try as much as possible to acutely feel his pain as if it is us. And when another Jew is successful, we should try as much as possible to feel the success that they're feeling, to be happy for them. Number 5, a person could continue to sin and not slow down and not change, and yet the Ribono Shel Olam, even though his anger had been aroused, the Ribono Shel Olam has a midah, and that is ad kan v'sulai. The Ribono Shel Olam says, okay, I got angry, I won't be angry anymore. I will stop being angry, even though the person has not stopped sinning. And we quoted the Michtam Eliyahu, who actually explained that this is an understanding of why the Ribono Shel Olam gave us Eretz Yisrael in the aftermath of the Shoah. It's not that perhaps we changed or we repented, but it was an illustration of the midah of lo hechzik la'ad apai. God's anger at some point stops, and He shows Rachamim, because Ribono Shel Olam says, you know what? If they're not learning their lesson with anger, maybe they'll learn their lesson with mercy. So too, if you're having difficulty with someone, and they deserve really that you should be angry at them, because they're rotten, and you've been upset at them, at a certain point you let go and you say, maybe if show kindness to them, that will take care of it. Number 6, ki chafez chesedhu. God has a special affinity for acts of kindness, that Hashem allows Malachi Asharis to say, you know what, this person is rotten to the core, but they once did a kind act. Let's focus on that, or like it says over here, let's zoom in on that and ignore the other aspects of their personality. So the Talmud Devorah says, likewise, this really has 3 ramifications for us. Someone who is a rasha, but once did a kindness to you, or even once did a kindness to someone else, or even has one good quality. Let's focus in on that, and despite the fact that they're 99.9% rotten, let's focus on the one good thing that they may have done, and we'll ignore everything else. And certainly when it comes to a spouse, the Talmud Devorah says, the fact that the spouse raised your children or protected you for sin, that's more than enough to have positive feelings toward them. Number 7, Yashuv Yerachamenu, it should be a Yud. God restores His mercy on us, meaning that the midah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is that when a person does tshuva, the Talmud Devorah says, you don't come through the bottom of the hay, but rather you come through the top of the hay, because a Baal Tshuva who succumbed in the past has to take extra safeguards and come through the top of the hay. And the Talmud Devorah says this is the meaning of Teshuvah, Tashuv hay, to restore the hay. God places the Baal Tshuva on a higher pedestal even than someone who never sinned. Likewise, if someone hurt you, insulted you, was mean to you, and now tries to patch it up, You should bring them closer to you even than they were originally. Don't say, well, I'll be friendly with him, but in the back of my mind, I'm always going to remember. No, you should bring them closer to you than even someone who never hurt you in the first place. God squelches sin, which means God does not allow the ramification of sin to even rival the ramification of a mitzvah. A mitzvah flourishes, it rises up, it grows. Like it says over here, it builds worlds, it builds mansions, it builds honorable garments in the world to come. But God squelches sin, that sin's ramification is very, very minor, and therefore God does not use a mitzvah to wipe out the ramifications of an avera. Likewise, when we think about another human being, and the good that they've done and the bad that they've done, we should suppress all the bad that they did. It should not rise before our mind's eye. It should not be significant and important to us. Instead, the good deeds that they did should rise and have an elevated status. And by the way, we asked the question, it seems rather similar to Ki Chafetz Chesed Hu, and that we discussed in the Shiurim. V'sashlich b'metzulos yom kol chatoisam, number 9, and this is as follows. A person sinned, they have to be punished. God appoints a Rasha to punish them. So we would think the Rasha is merely carrying out the will of God. No. Once the person accepts their predicament and their punishment, God, so to speak, regrets having ever allowed any punishment to come to the person, and he allows the evil and the Midas Hadin to boomerang back at the Rasha. So too, if you see a Rasha and he's being punished, once he's being punished, don't hate him anymore. Once the Midas Hadin has been executed, then you need to kick in the Midas Harachamim. In other words, God also has this midah that once the Midas Hadin comes out, he immediately throws the Midas Hadin back on the Rasha and is Ma'ira Rachamim. So too, if you see somebody, a bad person, and clearly he's being punished min hashamayim, immediately have mercy on him, and say the Midas Hadin has already taken effect, now's the time to kick in Midas Harachamim. Number 10, Titain emes li'Yaakov. Yaakov refers to the average Jew. He does not go beyond the letter of the law. But even though he doesn't go beyond the letter of the law, he follows what he needs to follow. So Hashem gives this person not an extra degree of kindness, but a certain yashrus and a certain midas ha'emes in corresponding to the level of yashrus with which this person conducted himself. In other words, somebody who does what he needs to do is deserving of a degree of justness, and he earns it, and he does receive it from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So too, if you see someone, even if they're not very righteous, but they do what they have to do, they deserve that we deal with them with a certain yashrus of chesed. They deserve a certain chesed. And then, number 11 is the midah of chesed li'Avraham. Chesed li'Avraham is God deals with people who go beyond the letter of the law with an extra degree of, I guess it's right, midas harachamim. Hashem treats people that go above and beyond with an extra mercy above and beyond what they deserve. So where this midah comes into play is when you see a tzaddik or a Talmid Chacham, they deserve extra rachamim and extra mercy and extra love from us. Asher nishbata la'aviseinu. Here's a guy, he has no redeeming qualities. He never did anything good in his life. He's a Rasha Marusha. However, at the end of the day, they're Bnei Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So God says, you know what? Even though they don't deserve any rachamim and they don't deserve any mercy, but I will be merciful on them because they're Bnei Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So too, says the Talmud Devorah, every Jew, even if they're a Rasha themselves, they deserve a rachamim because they are Bnei Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Because if we embarrass them, we're embarrassing their ancestors. We're embarrassing the Avos. So to protect the honor of the Avos, we should show all Jews compassion and mercy. And finally, Mimei Kedem is someone who's so rotten, they've depleted all the mercy of the forefathers. So why should we have mercy on them? The answer is we go best. Sometimes Hashem says, even though this person is so rotten, and even though there's no mercy to show them, and the mercy of the avos has been depleted, but once upon a time, they were good, like the day they were born, or at least the first 3 minutes they were born, before they started nagging their mother. So every human being, there was a point of time in their life, even though they were born crying, but after 3 minutes, they stuffed the kid with the pacifier, and they tied him up in a bundle, so that basically he's in a straitjacket. And at that moment, for one split second, he didn't bother anyone. Mamish, he was a tzaddik for a moment in his life. We go back to time immemorial. God has a midah that He goes back to time immemorial. Before we ever sinned, there was always a time that every human being at one point in their existence was innocent and worthy of love. And the Torah Devorah says so beautifully, Uvazeh lo yimatzeh adam. With this attitude, you will never find someone. I know you're thinking, but this guy and that guy, there's nothing good about them. No. With this attitude, that there was a time, from time immemorial, that he had an innocent moment, lo yimatzeh adam, you will not find any human being, she'enoi roi, at least a Jew, she'enoi roi la'itiva, that it's not worthwhile to be kind to them, ulespalal al shloimah, and pray for their peace, l'rachem olav, and to have mercy on them. So this is a brief overview, and it's probably worthwhile to carry something like this around, because even though, again, as I mentioned, I never encounter any annoying people, but there are people, probably not on this Zoom, who do encounter difficult people sometimes. So, as the Torah Devorah says, when you encounter a situation, the ideal thing is identify under what category it falls out. Say, I am now going to fulfill this and this midah, so that this midah should be manifest by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the world should now be full of this midah. Shkoyach Reb Nasan for the sheets. And Be'ezus Hashem, tomorrow, Tuesday, we will begin Perek Beis of Torah Devorah. I guess if anybody wants them, if you're on the WhatsApp, you could ask Gedalia Schwartz or myself, and we'll try to get it to you. Okay, Rabbi Say, have a great day. Shkoyach.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.